back to the Apartment 6 podcast. I'm Jess.
I'm Marissa.
And today we have a special guest. We have our friend, Julia.
That's right.
We have our friend Julia Ferraro. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
So for some background, Julia and I went to middle school and high school together. We met playing soccer in like 6th or 7th grade. And we were in like Spanish class together in middle school. And then in high school, we were in a ton of classes together. And we did theater together. And
we worked at Dunkin' Donuts together.
Oh, yeah.
And that was another layer.
Most importantly, we worked at Dunkin' Donuts together. We drove each other absolutely batshit crazy.
True that.
And we're still the greatest of friends to this day. She's now a friend of Marissa's too by the transitive property of friendships. Yay. So today, with our very high-tech setup, we have 2 microphones and 3 girls. So
Do with that what you will.
So Marissa and I are sharing a microphone, and if you hear any sort of awkwardness, that's why. we don't
Figure it out.
Okay, but see, if you didn't if you didn't hear that, that's because Marissa's not mic'd up. She's like, it's gonna be fine, but it's like no one can hear that. Anywho, Julia's like, I wanted to come on this podcast.
I'm so new to the podcasting world. I'm like, oh, how does this work?
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out as we go.
There we go.
Basically, today, Julia was just coming over anyway, having a little friend time, and we asked her if she'd want to be on the podcast because some feedback that we've gotten is that people would love to have guests on the podcast, and also a lot of the guests that we would have, like our friends, listen to the podcast, so it's like fun for them to hopefully hear their friends.
And it's funny too because I listen to the podcast. Obviously, I love listening to you guys, and I always feel like I'm in the room with you when I listen. So it's actually cool that I literally am in the room while you guys are doing it. So
not even while we're doing it, you're doing it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you're down to do this. I know it's not everyone's thing to like sit and talk with a microphone on you for like an hour, especially because we talk about like personal topics. Like we're not just like asking you to give like a book report. It's like you're talking about things that like how you feel about things, and I know that that's like not everyone's thing to be sitting around like sort of giving personal info and anecdotes, but we're excited to have you here, and we're gonna tease the fact that we're gonna be talking about religion in this episode. But first, let's get into our roses and thorns. Marissa, what's your thorn?
Oh, my thorn, you guys. Oh, this past week I had my heart broke.
Oh,
no.
Like a great chorus. She had her heart broke.
I was going for that like surround sound moment because I don't have a microphone in front of me, so I have to give it some surround sound.
This is gonna be crazy trying to share this mic. Just fair warning, you guys. But yeah, I mean, I won't go into the whole thing, but I went on a really great date and then sort of was a little bit ghosted in a confusing way, and then finally was like, hey, what's up with this? Where are we at? And the guy was like, oh, I was seeing someone else before I went on a date with you, and I'm gonna go out with them.
Boo.
Yeah. So I did my crying, I did my, wallowing in it and listening to sad music and journaling, but I feel like I, got it out and I feel better, so it's okay. Who's gonna go next?
It's me. I can go next. Marissa thinks this is so funny. Like, Marissa, can't get her act together over here because she's laughing so hard about the fact that we have to share a microphone. It's actually harder than I thought it was going to be fair. I was like, no, it's not going to be a big deal. We'll just, but it is kind of hard. If we were maybe, smarter, we could have, set the mic up in front of us, in the stand, and then just, bobbed our heads in and out. But also, I feel like that could get dicey. But, okay, my thorn, I had a gynecologist appointment and it hurt. That's it. We don't need to even talk about it. It just, it was just a routine checkup, but it hurt more than it has in the previous years for some reason. I think I was just pretty tense. I don't know. Like my gynecologist even was like, you're very tense right now. And I was like, yeah, I can feel that I was really tense.
Tell me something I don't know.
Yeah. So that's really it. It was just not I was physically I feel like for me, I'm such a wuss when it comes to like physical pain that I do feel like I don't have to experience physical pain a lot. So like of like the negative or just like unpleasant things that happened this week, like the time I felt physical pain because I had a what is it called?
I have no idea. I know the metal thing. It's cold.
Yeah, I always trip up on what it's actually called, but having that shoved inside you, it hurts. Julie, what's your thorn?
It's really funny that you said your thorn was related to the gynecologist, because I was thinking about what my thorn would be, and I was thinking I had my period, I think a few days ago, and it was one of those times where like it was just more annoying than usual. Like the cramps were really bad. I was a little more moody. I mean, we get through it. It happens every month, so it's not something I'm not used to, but it was just one of those times of the month that was just a little more difficult, but good.
I remember that you used to have them pretty bad when we were younger too.
Yeah.
Like, I remember one time you telling me that you like threw up because of it. And,
yeah.
I remember that you got like really bad cramps. So like for you to have like a bad period as an adult, like oof.
Like woof. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh. Well, on a happier note, Marissa, what's your rose?
My rose is just because we haven't spoken to you guys since this happened. My rose, and a lot of people's roses, is that Joe Biden was our president-elect. And it felt especially gratifying because certain swing states flipped, like Georgia and Pennsylvania. That at first we thought maybe wouldn't go our way, but then they did, and it was just so gratifying to watch that happen. What about you?
Well, of course, my rose is definitely that we now have President-elect Joe Biden. That's been like the highlight of the last couple of weeks, is just like breathing a sigh of relief and kind of like for the first time being able to somewhat predict the future in a way, because I feel like when it comes to the coronavirus, I've been very like, well, we don't know what's going to happen because it'll totally depend on who we have as president in 2021. Because I just feel like I don't just feel like this is a fact. Like their styles are so different, and what they're talking about doing for coronavirus is so different. So whenever it's come down to like, I wonder if we'll be dealing with this a year from now. Like I always have said, like we have no idea what things are going to look like for the next year without knowing who the president is going to be. So I feel like just having hope around coronavirus has like carried, and for the country in general, but specifically like in the foreseeable future, that's like a big piece of change that I've been able to kind of count on the last couple weeks. I feel like everything else is change that needs to happen on like a macro level and needs to happen over time. But with coronavirus, I'm hopeful that we can start seeing major change within like the first few months of 2021. So that's definitely my rose too. I would say like if I was picking a rose from like just this week, or if I was picking a rose that's different from your rose, probably having Julia here. Honestly, I feel like that's been like the thing that I've been most excited about, because you texted me earlier this week, so I kind of was like aware that you were coming for like all of the work week and things like that. So I was like looking forward to the weekend. Anytime that I have like something that I'm looking forward to is good.
Yeah, for sure. And I thought about you. I was like, I kind of miss Jess, So
kinda.
I really missed you. So it was just nice to like, being able to see you. And I was gonna say that was gonna be my rose.
It's all right. You can still be it. I mean, you can still say it.
My rose was seeing Jess and Marissa, because I always enjoy when I come over. I feel like we get along so well too. So it's just so nice to like.
Just some gals getting along.
Okay. We do get along really well. I feel like it's funny because you were obviously like, my friend first. Like you two wouldn't know each other without, me. But you guys get along so well, and I always knew you would. Like in college when I met Marissa, like said, "Oh my gosh, Julia, I found like my college version of you."
For sure. And I
selfish.
definitely gained a friend through you. I mean, I would definitely consider us friends for sure.
Me too.
No.
This is so nice. This is truly the oddest episode because the only time we've had a guest has been like it was like my mom, and it was me interviewing my mom, or not interviewing, although kind of. And so like just the dynamic even of having 3 people, it's like, what's gonna happen? It's crazy. But to dive into our topic, so we're talking about religion today, and this is a topic that's been on Marissa and I's like running list of things we want to talk about for a while, just because it pops up like every once in a while in our own conversations, and we kind of have similar views on it and similar backgrounds with it. But Julia, I feel like, is someone who knows even more about religion than like I would say I do. And it's also been like more rooted in your life and your family's lives. And I also feel like it's something that you have practiced like more recently and delving into more recently. And so you and I like organically started having a conversation about religion earlier today, and I was like, that's what we should talk about on the podcast, because I just was so interested in everything you were saying about your spirituality and how you grew up spiritual versus how you are now. So if you would you mind telling us a little bit about how you grew up and like what your faith was like as a kid?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up going to the Church of Christ. So I guess technically I would consider myself like a Protestant growing up. And like, so I would go to church every Sunday. It was the church that my dad's mom, so my nana, grew up going to. So I just kind of like started going to church there. And, God was always like a huge, I guess, part of my family's life, and it was kind of like the guiding force of my family and how we just kind of like led our lives. It was just a huge part of our lives. Like, my dad is one to always kind of put, God first, but in the sense that kind of helped our family bond be strong. And so I do see the positive aspects of it, and I do see Christianity and religion as like a positive way of life, and I do understand it for sure. As I get older, and I've definitely like had my own opinions, and I started kind of exploring outside of my own religion and Christianity, and you just kind of gather all the information that you get in the world, and you just kind of learn different things about what you always known about growing up in a certain sector of the church. And it's interesting to kind of learn more about in my own spirituality. So yeah, I grew up in the Church of Christ. So that's kind of my background.
I have a similar trajectory, I guess, because like when I was growing up, I went to a Roman Catholic church, and it was just like an obvious thing. Like it was like the thing we did as a family. So I never thought about it. Like I did all the like routine things you have to do. Like I was baptized, I went to CCD, I like did the confirmation, whatnot. Like I did all those steps that you have to do, but I never did them with personal intention. I always just did them out of like familial obligation. And similar to you, it wasn't until I was a little older and able to like do my own research and questioning and stuff that I took it as less of a given and started to think about like my agency when it came to religion and like my opinions, and if I actually felt strongly about the things that I was like agreeing to or learning about. And I was like, maybe I don't feel strongly about it at all. What about you?
What's interesting about you saying that is that I was similar to both of you in that I church started for me at a really young age, and like Marissa, I grew up Catholic, and it was just I did CCD, and it was just kind of this thing I did. It was almost like going to school, or I feel like I mean, I definitely like asked to be enrolled in things like dance and soccer and basketball, but it was sort of like, you know, I didn't bring myself there. Like my parents like dropped me off and they knew when my practices were. So it was kind of just like one more thing in my schedule. But I started questioning why I was there from like a very young age. So like instead of being like, oh, this is just something I do and enjoying it or not enjoying it, and then growing up and being like, but what does this mean though? I like was questioning things starting as young as like elementary school, like when I started, like more like late elementary school, like early middle school. And for me, I think part of what was maybe, I don't want to say hurtful because that's not like really what I mean, but like hurtful, I guess, to my ability to like grow within religion was that like my parents and like my family unit, like we didn't go to church. So it was a thing that I had to go to. Like it was like, oh, you have to go to your CCD class, and my brother had to go to CCD class, but like my parents didn't take us to like church regularly. So I kind of was like, it felt like this thing that I was very attached to my mom, and so it felt like just like time that I had to be separated from like my home and my mom, and I was like, why do I have to do that? Like, whereas like if maybe she was like bringing me every Sunday, like you guys went on Sundays, then it would have been like oh, this is like a family thing that we do together, but that's not how it felt. And I mean, it's not like we like never went. Like I think we went to like Easter services and, you know, things like that. Like we would go to like special church days, but I feel like we never just like went to church, or at least I don't have any memory of just like going to church on a Sunday, or at least not like routinely. So I started sort of questioning like, why do I have to like go here? And I don't know the kids here, because in our town, in me and Julia's town, it was like there were two sides of town, the north and the west, and there was a church on each side. And so like my parents, for whatever reason, enrolled me in the church on the opposite side of town. And so like all of the kids in elementary school that went to like the West Intermediate or the Shawshene Elementary School were like at that church, and I didn't go to those ones. So I was like, who are these kids? Like, and I just felt nervous and uncomfortable. And you Julia didn't even go to either one of those. You went to a church in another town.
Yeah, I was just gonna actually chime onto that too, because I grew up going to like a Church of Christ, where the town we grew up in was a predominantly white Catholic town. And so I remember, I think when I started questioning like organized religion was essentially when everyone in high school was getting confirmed, and it was like a big deal to everyone, like a religious milestone for people. And I always questioned, because as a Protestant, we don't have like confirmations like that. So I felt weirdly ostracized by my own peers, even though I knew we all believed in one God, just like in a different way. So that's when I'm like, if we all believe in the same thing, why do I feel ostracized from like my peers who also believe in something very similar? So that's, I think, when I started to question it.
Yeah. So I feel like for me, I started questioning it. Like I remember, I think it was my 6th grade CCD class. I remember asking the teacher something that had to do with science. I asked her something like, well, how can that be true and this be true? And I remember her telling me something like, you kind of have to, I remember her telling me, first of all, that she thought for me as a kid, it sounded like I was more rooted in science than in religion. And she kind of was like, you maybe have to like suspend your belief a little bit here and just like go out on a limb and just believe it. And I kind of was like, how do I do that? And I remember saying in like middle school that I didn't necessarily like believe in God. It was just that I was assuming it to be true because it's what I was told. And that was hard for me, because I was like, are all these other kids like eating this up? Is like, like everyone else seemed like completely fine with being there and seemed comfortable and seemed to enjoy what they were like reading and writing about. And I was like, I feel so disconnected from this. Like I was very like I remember, I think I would ask my teacher, like, do these people actually hear God talk? Like, does he have a voice? Like I was just very confused by it. Like I took everything very literal. And then when they were like, oh, it's not so literal, I'd be like, well, then how do you know? Like, and that's when they'd be like, you have to believe. And we would just like go in this circle. And I feel like that's when I kind of started like questioning religion and like whether or not I had a place in it.
Yeah, I hearing you say that made me realize that I think that people who teach certain religions do some like picking and choosing of the things that you should take literally versus the ones that you shouldn't. Like they'll tell you that. They'll be like, "Oh, if it doesn't make sense to you, don't take it so literally." But then they'll like reference specific lines from the Bible that say certain things you shouldn't do, and they'll be like, "You shouldn't do that because it says so in the Bible. Take it literally." So it's just it just is kind of inconsistent in that way. And I remember when I started questioning was when I started to become more aware of like social issues like abortion and gay rights and things like that, and even like women's rights and women's issues, because I kind of saw the contradiction between the message of like be kind to everyone and treat everyone equally, and then these very like oppressive encouragements of like you should not be treating these people equally. Like those two things started to clash in my mind, and I was like, how could these people who preach being kind make some people feel so ostracized and control them in these really aggressive and unfortunate ways? So that for me is when my questioning of it came into play.
Yeah, for sure. I do agree with that a lot. And it's interesting because I did grow up in a very faithful household, and I still do. Like, my family is very religious. I do understand, like, the benefits of it and, like, being able to kind of follow not entirely what the Bible says, but like, you know, putting your faith into something. I think having faith in something is super important, believing in something that you know everything's going to turn out for the best, whether it's in like a God, another higher power, or what have you. So I do understand it. I think when it does come to Christianity, I do see the contradictions a lot. And I think what really bothers me is that especially with social issues, I've been seeing, and especially during the whole presidential, you know, election and all the campaigning, I see a lot of people using the word or the Bible as a way to kind of support their own biases and what's going on politically. And that's something I always felt like was somewhat hypocritical. At the same time, I can understand that, you know, my dad in particular, he's truly like a true Christian. He's always been super into his faith, and I believe he's like a great man because of it. So I do see the benefit of that. I have a hard time when people claim and identify as a true Christian, but use the Bible to support the hypocrisy of what's happening in politics. And that's something that has definitely made me question my own faith, my own religion.
Absolutely. Like I you and I were talking earlier about like who would Jesus have voted for?
Right.
And like I'll just let that one sit there because it's kind of like I don't feel like I need to. You just answered it in your head. Whatever you think is what you think. I think I know who Jesus would have voted for, but like, you know, if I know Jesus, like I think I know Jesus, but I don't really know. So, but the other thing that I wanted to go back to when you talking about like hypocrisy, right? Mm-hmm. I think one of the first hypocrisies that I found in Christianity that really bothered me and that I couldn't let go of, and ultimately I think is a huge part of why I asked to quit CCD when I was 14, was the violence in it. And yet like there's like, I think the reason I say it's hypocritical is because I feel like we're preaching like, you know, you shouldn't kill and you shouldn't hurt other people. And like I don't know that they specifically preach peace. You know, it's been a long time since I've sat in church, but I feel like there's this undertone, this idea of like, yes, like we should all herd together and be a better mankind, unless you go against us, and then we'll be violent. And I feel like there's a lot of violence that like Christianity, for me, Christianity is rooted in violence. Like the idea specifically of Jesus being crucified was always extremely scary for me, and was a huge reason why I like had trouble sitting in classes, because I would get so like sick to my stomach over every time we would talk about it at Easter time. And I found that like when I was in 8th grade in social studies, we learned about different religions that like belonged to, you know, ancient civilizations, and we learned about different cultures and things like that. And I remember that was the first time I learned about like Hinduism and Buddhism. And I learned that, you know, Buddhism was rooted in this king going and, you know, saying like, I don't want any of this anymore. Like, I don't want this kingdom. I want to like go be enlightened. And this is like me summarizing this like years after learning about it. So my apologies if this isn't completely correct. But my understanding is that he was like, I want to leave all this behind and I want to like really find myself and find my purpose. And he like goes into the woods, I think. He goes into nature and he stays there until he feels what he describes as enlightenment. And I loved that idea that this religion was rooted in finding a higher power and finding a purpose instead of violence of someone not believing you and, you know, sacrifice. And that like always kind of scared me. And so I felt really turned off by that, because anything sort of gory or violent like doesn't suit me. And so that was the first hypocrisy that I found that made me feel that way. But then of course when I got older, it became, you know, more about like social issues and things that are in my control.
I was just, when you were talking about the like crucifixion as the violent thing that they show you in CCD and stuff, I was just thinking about the Spanish Inquisition. Do you remember learning about that in history? I just did like a quick fact check, but it was in the 1400s in Spain, and basically they were trying to enforce like Orthodox Christianity, and they did it extremely violently. Like I remember learning about the Spanish Inquisition basically meaning like religious people used extremely brutal, violent methods to make sure people stayed within their religion. It's just like insane, because it's not just like, oh yeah, they did this one violent act to Jesus in the Bible, but like that's symbolic, like take that as a symbol, whatever. It's like, it's not only that, it's these other historical events of extreme violence too that really pile on to the hypocrisy.
Yeah, and like I think that, you know, the fact that like the crucifix is like the biggest symbol when it comes to at least Catholicism, but I think like Christianity in general, to me, it's like if that was just part of the history, I don't know, I could understand that, but it's really like the thing that is put on a pedestal and like shown in every church.
Yeah, and I think too, and I personally, I've come to realize, I feel like faith, spirituality, religion, or what have you, is such a personal thing. So I think the idea of you have to follow this or being told from like an external force that like this is something you have to believe in has never resonated with me quite well. So, and I think I still kind of see some of that in like today's age too, where I just feel like it's a very personal thing for people, and like growing your own faith I think is a personal journey. And so any external factor, you know, I have a hard time kind of understanding you know, those people who kind of like not force but really implement a certain way of life onto someone else, if that's somehow you personally resonate with it too. So I just think it's a very personal thing, I've come to realize.
Yeah. And so like I currently identify as agnostic. What would you say that you identify as, Julia?
If you asked me a few months ago, I would say I was Christian. And I guess I still kind of do, but I think I'm at this point now where I'm still kind of questioning and exploring more spirituality. So I would say at this point I'm more spiritual but not religious. But I guess I'm still trying to figure it all out.
What does spirituality look like for you?
I think spirituality is essentially connecting to a higher power, whether that's God or another like existential guidance. I kind of believe in like the power of the universe and kind of being one with the universe. And I think if anything too, I believe in guardian angels in a sense too. And I believe I have a guardian angel that kind of guides me like in a way in which eventually one day, as I follow my guardian angel's guidance, I'll eventually be led to her, and the afterlife once I pass here on earth. And I think I truly understand that a human experience, there's a physical being and a spiritual being. I just think that, I want to explore more of that spiritual side. So, and I think religion is a sector of spirituality, but I'm just kind of figuring out what type of spirituality like most resonates with me. So.
Yeah. What would like your ideal, when you think of, if you were to visualize like how you want spirituality to feel for you, like what does that look like?
Yeah, I feel like definitely in alignment with my like spirit, mind, and body in a sense. I think feeling at peace here on this physical earth, what I think would kind of be like my enlightenment in a sense. And I think if I feel a connection with like the entire universe, and I see myself as like a component of something so much larger than what I see on a day-to-day basis, I just kind of put that into perspective a lot. So I do a lot of meditation. I feel like when I meditate, that's kind of my prayer, if you will. Like that's my time to kind of connect to I guess my higher power, or like the greater purpose of life in a sense. So I definitely feel a sense of alignment when I do meditate, and I feel that sense of peace that I feel like a lot of people who would say they're religious do feel after they I guess practice or worship in their own way. They feel like a sense of peace, stronger faith, alignment, or really any sort of sense of like calm within themselves. I get that through meditation. So
like I'm kind of like turning this into an interview where I'm like being a journalist, but if you had to explain to someone, or if like you were giving advice to someone like me on how to meditate, what would you say to do? Like for you, does it involve like following a video or a book or something, or an app, or is it like a truly solo experience? And like, how do you quiet your mind, or do you not try to quiet your mind because that can then cause more friction? Like what would be your advice?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. And I've struggled with this for so long. I started meditating in high school. I was so bad at it just because my brain went in every which direction that it could go in, and I never felt like I could quiet my mind. But over time, as I continued to practice it, I've learned that you really can't quiet your own mind. Your mind is going to continue experiencing the thoughts that you always have, and there's no real way to truly shut down. So I guess the new way I approach it is that when I do think of a thought, when I am in the state of meditation, I tell myself, I just go, I'm thinking right now. I'm just thinking. Your thoughts are not you. So I think there's a level of recognition of the thought, and then on top of that, accepting it as just a thought and a thought alone. And I think once there comes that like elements of acceptance to your thought, once you have that acceptance, I feel like it's a lot more easy to release the thought. So it does come with like a little bit of process, and it's certainly so much easier said than done for sure. But I think once you kind of accept that this is just like how it's happening, because I always felt frustrated when I couldn't shut off my brain. Like I just want to feel alignment with, just feel a sense of calm, feel a sense of peace, but like my mind would always go a million miles a minute. So I would just say accepting that you're thinking, thank yourself for the thought, accept that it's a thought, and letting it go, and then continue trying to feel like a state of like I am one. So again, a lot easier said than done, but
yeah, I feel like, so the guided meditations that I've done have been, like you start at your head and then you move to your chest, and then you like if they kind of go through your body, or they want you to like imagine feeling your toe. Well, I guess you can feel your toes, but imagine that. But and the thing is, like, I then sort of like hyper fixate on my body, like in a way that's not good. Like I'm like, do I feel my toes? Am I feeling my toes though? Like, and I start getting like sidetracked and sort of beating myself up. So I feel like, do you like try to just like sit still, and like instead of doing something where it's like telling you to like work through things, you're like kind of like having quiet time to let thoughts come in and pass? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. And I guess too, I've tried so many different methods to it. There are times where I have done the body scan. So feel your head, like relax your forehead, release just unclench your jaw. And I try to be more mindful of my physical body. Sometimes that's, again, a lot more difficult. I do listen to a guided meditation, and so I like to have someone kind of tell me like what I should be doing in the moment. And of course, sometimes if that doesn't work, what I like to do is sometimes I like to light a candle and I just focus on the flame. And it gives me a focus of some sort. So one of my actually two of my senses. First, my sight of looking at the flame, and then the sense of smell from the candle gives me two ways to kind of ground myself in the present moment. And sometimes I'll just listen to the guided meditation while I'm already focused on something else. So let's say I do have a thought that comes and it's not going anywhere. It's like, okay, put that energy that you have in that thought and focus on the candle in front of you. So then you're activating two more of your senses. So that's a technique that I kind of like to use. And I think it's really good when you incorporate different elements of the senses to it. Maybe if you have like an oil diffuser, or you have a candle going, or you have a heating pad on you or something. I like to do that a lot to kind of feel the heat. And like if you find yourself kind of drifting away in thought, just bring that energy back to how you feel on your physical body. So just like little things to kind of engage your senses, I feel helps you ground yourself in the present moment.
Yeah, I want to try that because I like the idea of having something tangible to sort of like latch on to when you want to like focus, and like sort of letting the thoughts come and go, but ultimately like having your focus rooted on a candle or rooted on like a tactile sensation. I think that sounds really cool. I definitely want to try that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I feel like my issues with religion and spirituality and even like trying to meditate and stuff like that are, I get wrapped up in how abstract they are, because like you were just saying, like I do a lot better with something that I can see and touch and like it's actually in front of me. So like obviously you can see how that would connect to religion. Like I could never really take that leap of faith and say I don't need to see it to know it's true. I would always be the opposite of being like I can't know it's true until I see it. So yeah, I feel that way about like meditating too, and that's why I feel like journaling is more effective for me, because I'm like physically writing my thoughts onto a sheet of paper and then I can see them after, so they're like physically out of my head and onto the paper, and it helps to like have them become, instead of an abstract thought, a tactile sheet of words.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I would think, the most common reason people struggle with meditation, just that like, or with religion, that they have trouble visualizing things that they don't see, that they can't see, because there's no like reference point for them.
Yeah, and actually that's actually a really good point, because I think earlier I said I believe I have a guardian angel, and I think my guardian angel is my Nana that passed away about 4 years ago. And the reason why I kind of see her as my guidance, because I know I had a physical relationship with her on this physical earth, and I felt unconditional love from her, and I felt like I could always trust her while she was present here on earth. So I think that relationship hasn't changed, even though she's passed on to, you know, a higher state, if you will. And I know she's guiding me, so I know, so in my mind, because I trusted here on earth, I can trust her even when she's I believe in heaven. I guess I still believe in the aspect of heaven, even though I'm still questioning the full idea of Christianity. But I know that if I kind of lean on her as existential guidance, like she'll guide me to where she is one day. So that's how I kind of see it. So because I had like that physical relationship, it's so much easier for me to identify that as she's still guiding me to this day, even though she's not like with me right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And you're the first person who, like, I think like when people talk about guardian angels, I feel like I've heard it more from like, they think of it as like someone who's passed on who they like never met, like, oh, like I have this guardian angel who like I never got to meet, and that's why they're their guardian angel, like as if they like saw, they like helped, you know, guide them even from like being a baby. So the idea of like this person who you grew up with and then like they just take on a new role in your life, like that makes a lot of sense to me. And like you asked me, we were talking earlier about like whether or not we believe in heaven and hell, and I was like, oh, I don't really like know anymore, but like I think that like I do believe in them, but then or I do assume that they're there. And then when I think about like, do I believe in them though? I'm like, oh man, I don't know. And you asked me, and no one's ever asked me this before, well, what about your Nana? Do you think your Nana's in heaven then? And I was like, well, yeah, but I've always assumed that, but I've never thought, it's always like the thoughts have been two different things, like whether or not heaven exists has been separate from my Nana, because I'm like, oh no, of course she went to heaven, but then I'm like, wait, does heaven exist? And it's funny because I was saying to you, you know, I wonder if heaven just looks different than how we imagine it. And you and I were saying how we imagine it as like being this thing in the clouds where every like piece of furniture is made of cloud dust. And I was saying, like, what if heaven is actually like being on earth and getting to experience and take part in earth, but without your physical body like taking up space, and so you just get to like wander and whatnot? Because I've had a single experience that makes me feel like my Nana like heard me, so I'm like, how did she get all the way down here from up there? So I'm like, maybe she's among.
Yeah, that makes me think that maybe the reason I've struggled with picturing heaven is because I haven't lost anyone close enough to me to imagine them there. So like I don't know who's up there. So like I can't, but I totally get like wanting to place someone that you've lost that you're really close to have like a reference for where they are now. And that just kind of makes me think that like honestly, like however you feel about religion or wherever you're at with it, I think the purpose of it is to lighten the load of your earthly life, to make things a little easier for you here on earth, whether that's because you know that people you've lost are still with you, or because you can trust that this higher power is helping you and always there for you. I think no matter what you're getting from it, that's kind of the idea of religion, that like it's helping you to be an earthly being and to feel okay no matter what happens to you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, for sure. I think that actually, that's a really good way to put it, and I didn't even think of it like that. It really does kind of help your religion or spirituality or what have you, like helps your physical life here on earth, just having faith that, you know, your life here has a purpose. And I truly believe that. I feel like every single human being, or even just being, has a purpose in this world. And if religion, spirituality, or anything like that helps you to discover that, then I think it's an excellent tool for self-discovery, for sure.
Yeah, I really feel like religion ultimately is a coping mechanism, and it's a community. And I feel like that's, I mean, I don't know if that's why it was started, but I do feel like that was like, it's a coping mechanism. That's why it's stuck along. Stuck around. Thank you. Oh, I don't know if anyone heard Marissa say that because she doesn't have a microphone, but I feel like that is why it's stuck around, because it's resonated with people who have dealt with loss or who have dealt with hardship and needed a sense of community and needed a sense of purpose and higher power. I think that's also how it's gotten rooted in so many things, like in, you know, the beginning of our country and in AA meetings. And I'm thinking about like very specific things, but it's rooted in a lot because it's mattered a lot to a lot of people. I'm someone who like can sort of like make fun of religion and things like that, but I think like I can also like appreciate it for what it is. And I'm really happy that you're willing to chat with us about it. This like feels like it flew by, but we've been talking for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I just really appreciate rather your experience with it. I appreciate that you were someone who like grew up going to church and feeling a pressure to like fit in a specific church and in a specific box. And instead of like either going with it or like rebelling against it and then never looking at religion again, you have like kind of made it your own and turned back to spirituality at a time in your life where you're like looking for some guidance, like you're definitely we didn't really go a lot into like who you are, but a lot of people listening will know who you are. Like you're in a transition period between, you just graduated from grad school, and I think that like with this time that you have right now, stuck at home with coronavirus and whatnot, it's like kind of incredible to me that you like dove deeper into yourself and into your spirituality, because it's something I've never like been brave enough to do, is to like sit and think about like what I really believe and what I really like want. And I find every conversation I have with you is so interesting, because you're always like trying to grow and learn.
I so appreciate you. Oh my gosh. And I think it's interesting trying to find the upsides of COVID-19 and the experience that we've all been having with it thus far. And I think that's this spirituality and religion and kind of my own self-discovery has been a huge part of that. And I think in a more positive way. Growing up in the church, I was always brought up with one idea, and I definitely see the benefits of it. I see the faith. I see how empowering it really can be for some people. And, it's something I never want to knock on other people. But it's something it's interesting to question, and how you kind of adapt to it, how you kind of grow and evolve, and you kind of see other ways of thinking in the world. And it's very interesting to kind of see who I am in like the spiritual realm. So, and I think I love talking with both of you about things like this, because you guys have stimulating conversations. Like if we want to get to the root of the, not the problem, but like the truly like the content. I think it's so fun to kind of, talk about this kind of stuff with you. And I learn more about myself when I talk about, these things with you guys. And I think we really have stimulating conversations about it. So I really appreciate having you guys have me on the show sure.
We definitely do have great conversations. You guys should have seen us a few like an hour ago. We were standing in like a triangle formation trying to summon our truths and our falsehoods.
I was trying to make them like tap into their subconscious minds, because I'm like, you guys have to try this.
So we're standing there like waiting to fall backwards or fall forwards, and we're like saying like our names out loud, and Julia was like, if anyone walked into your apartment right now, they would be like, I'm walking out. But yeah, I feel like this is just like the kind of stuff we get up to, and I'm so glad that we finally got to record some of this for the archives, show it to the grandkids. Maybe if they still use Spotify and Apple Podcasts, you can rate us. Okay.
Yeah, nice.
All right. Well, any last words?
No. Just thanks for having me.
We love you, Julia.
I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Outro music.